I'm Mitch Waldberg, MGES. We actually started into the energy business modeling about 2006, 2008, dealing with the power in the industry and cogeneration business. In 2011, we launched and have been in the energy side and the energy reduction side since then. Our company, really when we started out, we've always been a comprehensive energy company. So when these EV challenges came to bear, it's kind of like this is right in our wheelhouse. So we focus on power generation, on-site power generation, connecting up with existing facilities, energy efficiencies, and looking at problem solutions for on any power needs that we have. And right now, there's huge problems going on that we are going to need to address, that we'll be addressing here. So the most important thing is that we have to come to the reality that you have a facility, rather if it's 1 year old or if it's 50 or 60-year-old, that is it's a pre-EV constructed facility. So all of the needs for your building is set up for is the past, not for the present and the future. So what we're going to do here is look at the EV requirements to maintain compliance with the OEM, what needs to be done to meet those requirements, create really a scope of work, what's the cost of the transition to an EV dealership, and what is the energy cost to operate an EV dealership, very important. And then what are the available incentives, tax credits, rebates, and grants that we can access for you. Okay, so right now, I'm talking to a lot of dealers. This is really where we're at. We're lost in the desert. When you're lost in the desert, what's the first thing you need to do? It's to identify where you're at. Then we can start looking at a direction of where to go to get to safety and to get home. So to determine where your facility's needs and where you're at, we have to look at how much power is the utility bringing to the property. We're bringing more power, bringing power from the transformer on the property to the building itself, which may take another transformer. How much available space is on the facility's existing panel or system right now, which is just unused amperage predominantly. What is the facility's energy demands or usage? And then how much capacity do we have available at your facility for the EVSEs, which stands for Electric Vehicle Service Equipment. So when we look at this program, we chose to identify and look at Ford because they're the ones that actually said we're going for a full commitment, and they put a program out of what the dealership's needs are and the operational needs. And by looking at Ford's lead, the other OEMs are going to be following suit. Whether it's domestics first is what we're really seeing, and then imports are kind of following a little bit of a second on that as far as directions. So right now, Ford itself is saying we need 3 fast chargers. Okay, and everyone thinks fast is cool, but by the time you see all of this, you might be thinking secondarily of if it's cool or not. But for the power needs, we're going to need 3 direct current fast chargers. And when they started originally, it was 120 to 180 kilowatts. Now the 240s are available, and actually 350s are on the market as well. So we're in this range now between 120 and 240 kilowatts at this particular time that's acceptable and that you'd want to really look at for your dealerships. Then they're looking at 7 level 2 chargers, which is 19.2 kilowatts. And then they come in with a stipulation with these NEMA plugs, which is where you plug in, and it's really slow charging. And they have a caveat of saying 50% of your service bays need to have these plugs, and currently they're capping it off at 10. So, and then we'll see if there's a capacity available to expand if we need to expand from there. So we've got the 3 fast chargers, the 7 level 2s, and then the NEMA plugs, which are the slow chargers predominantly. And as you can see, it's a lot of power, 1500 amps, 600 amps, and 400 amps. Now we have to look at, okay, here's the power requirements that the OEMs are going to require that Ford is requiring right now. Now we need to transition over and say, okay, how are we supposed to use this power? Well, 100% of all service vehicles are saying must be charged. Okay, so now guys, you're filling up the tanks of every vehicle that comes in. So 100%, and so 100% of all service vehicles being charged. The new EVs that are coming off the truck, they're coming in at a 20% charge. They're requiring you to bring it up to a 75% charge for test drives and things. And then on delivery, they're asking for 100% charge. So what they've done is saying, here's the equipment that you need to use, and here's how you're going to use it, which is going to have costs associated to both sides. So when we reiterate one more time, because this is very important, that the equipment power needs, if we went, say, a facility and we went to the, I look at it as iPhones. Right now we got iPhone 14s out. Do you want to go and get an iPhone 10 when you know that there's better technology out there? So if we look at it as saying we want to mix and match or just do all 240 kWs, 1500 amps, 609 amps for the level 2s, and then 400 amps for these NEMAs. A lot of space, a lot of power is needed on them. So everyone here, this is what we're doing. We're now in the charging business. And whether it's directly or indirectly. So what's involved in the transition is this. We need to determine a scope of work. Okay, every facility is built uniquely. It has specific requirements, specific demands, okay, and specific abilities at this particular time. So we look at really three options. Can we use your existing infrastructure for the utilities and the existing infrastructure for the building to run your level one, your NEMA plugs, your level 1s, level 2s, and your DCFCs, which is your direct current fast chargers? So that's one option. Okay. Number two is, can we use an existing infrastructure for the utilities and the building, sharing the needs? So say you have a building itself, it's a level 1 and a level 2, okay, that we can put inside the buildings, and then we can separate meter and go from a transformer on site to the fast chargers, because that's a crazy amount of power. And then the next scenario that we're going to be looking at is all EVSEs, electric vehicle service equipment, level 1s, 2s, and 3s are going to be on a separate meter, separate transformer, separate panels, and would be 100% on a new service. Okay, so those are our three options that we're seeing that's out there. So let's look at this and say, okay, you guys are you're car dealers, you're not energy experts. And so when we look at this thing, what is a transformer, what are the panels, and what do they look like? So these two areas are representations of a transformer that's outside outside of your buildings, typically, and then we're looking at certain circuitry and panels and switchgear that's inside that needs to be measured to identify what's being used and what's available to transition over, and what the equipment is. This is a 2,000 amp service, by the way, so that we're looking at this particular time. A lot of the dealerships are at 600 amp services. So when we look at the different plugs, and why I always come to this, and this slide's important, is the fact that you need to understand that all these different levels are equate to time and mileage. Okay, so a level 1, a very slow current, a very slow rate of charging. So you're going to get average about 5 miles per hour. Okay, so it takes a long time. You service vehicles, you got to get them in and out. Level 2 charging, you're obtaining about 25 miles of range per 1 hour of charging. And then the DC chargers, since we're seeing such a swing between 120 kilowatts and really 350 kilowatts, you're going to be getting 100 to 200 miles of range for every 30 minutes of charging that you're going to be dealing with. So a lot of power in a very short period of time. So here's just some looks of some EV charging systems that can be put in. They have, level 3s is that we're looking at predominant to the right, level 2s to the left. We can mix, there's ways you can take a level 2 and turn it into a level 3 DCFC, but here's some looks. It can bring some marketing, some appeal to it as well. So you can use it for, a little bit of addition than just to plug and play, but its primary focus is to plug it in, charge these vehicles, and get them moving. Continue to have them move. So the confusion, and I'm going to go through some examples here. All of this is real world that you're seeing. Okay, these aren't made up. These are things that we're seeing. Some proposals that some dealers have been able to share with me, so we can help support, educate ourselves on this. So this is one of the situations we're looking at, or you guys, your situations that you're looking at. Number one, they're saying, okay, we're coming in and we're selling you EV chargers, and here's everything's included. So we've got really what's here, a low range, mid range, and high range. Okay, so this is embedded into a presentation. So they're saying, okay, we have electrical engineering, we've got electrical hardware, EV chargers, installation, integration, network setup and activation, warranties, EV impact studies, and credits. And this is what some of the OEMs are saying, hey, come in, let's do an engineering study. Okay, this is something everyone's heard. Come in, give us $1,500, give us $2,500. We'll come down to your dealership. We'll give you an engineering study, okay? And then, which will help you make decisions for EVs, EV charging systems, and for converting your dealerships. Okay, so quite a range. So this is where the confusion's coming in. So we had that slide that's very generic. That information says, okay, EVSE equipment only, what we're seeing, cost of infrastructure, on-site work to the dealers is not being there, total price of equipment with general descriptions of locations, missing details, inspections. There's a lot of information you guys aren't receiving. Okay, this is actually what you're getting. Okay, I'm going to come in, I'm supposed to spend $300,000 or so for the chargers, and then plug them in and go. So here we go. Here's one of the. This is all embedded in the same proposal to a client. We're saying, okay, there's $173,000 worth of service, worth of product here, or services that we're going to be giving you, and here's the categories. So you're going under the assumption that, hey, $173,000, $175,000 is the cost of this. So we're looking at the insight. So insight is the studies. Here's the charging hardware plus distribution network. This is interesting. EV charging hardware distribution network based on program standard and specification EV impact study part 1 report. Okay. So to me, that language sounds like, hey, this is pretty inclusive. EV charging stations back, charge point, the software and things, that's going to be a part of it. So we're at 173,000. Okay. So now I'm going to go back a couple slides. Now, this is embedded in a secondary marketing thing, or support information, but I just showed $173,000. Now I'm looking at a slide that says estimated project cost, 332, 562, 737, 980. Okay, so wait a minute, we're off a lot. That's pretty confusing. So if we look at that, this slide right here is equipment only. The customer infrastructure side is not on-site work to the dealers. It's not in there, just in generics. Total price of the equipment with general description, location. There's a lot of things missing, and we'll see that in the following slides. And then what I'm saying is this: you're giving a lot of assumptions versus calculations for the on-site work, and also you're giving a number saying, hey, this is going to use 600 amps. Okay, what does that mean? What does that represent? And I'm starting to see, I call them common mistakes. They're not really mistakes. You're being led to saying more of a ready, shoot, ready, fire, aim. And so when you're coming in and you're saying, hey, if you want to take a Hummer as an example, you got to put a level 3 in your facility. And you know what? You've got a 480 volt system. you have just enough room for this to operate. As long as nothing else in the building is fully operating, you should be okay. So there's no plans, no nothing, but hey, you know what? This fits. So hey, it works. See, the power usage is going to be huge on this. This is what we're seeing. So here's what that engineering study shows. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're showing the locations. We're showing that there's a potential transformer on site, which there is here, a 40-volt transformer, and $2,500 bucks. Here's another one that we're needing to look at. This is very, very common. Everyone's seen this. That's been in the industry here. So we're giving the specifics for the EV charging systems. And one thing everyone needs to be very aware of, these EV systems, the chargers are commoditized. Okay, OEMs have certain requirements and specifications that they're going to need for performances. They're going to have certain levels of whether it be a UL listed or ETC listed code compliance. Okay, the power needs are there. This is what the OEM recommends. The utilities, they're there to keep you safe. Hey, we're here to approve that these specifications are being done. So the EV charger itself, even though that's what everyone's focused on, it's a commodity now. Okay, it's really about what looks, style, and software that it can process so that it can communicate back and forth and make the transition seamless. Okay, but this is something that we're seeing here. Hey, it's, you know what, 83,000, they're giving a discount, great. But in the red, they're saying install, painting, concrete, electrical provided by dealership. So what does that really mean? Here's a project that we're looking at so that we can start getting to bidding. So here's more of a proper way or methodology of going about these things. We have to go, this is where there's a separate transformer that's going to be utilizing, and then the level 2s and level 3s are going to be all put on one transformer itself. So to be able to even get a cost estimate, you have to understand first, what are your power needs? Okay, what am I going to be putting in? Am I going to be putting in 1, 2, or 3 of these 240 kilowatt chargers, or am I going to be putting in 120s or 150s? That will determine, and then same thing for the level 2s. How many level 2s is going to be on this circuit? And then the utilities we can do a calculation, and the utilities can then match the appropriate transformer. So in this particular case, we're going to have a pole set on this property that we had designed, and then there's going to be a pad with the transformer on there as well, so that we can and then put all the panels and things on the outside of the building separately metered. So this building itself is not going to be impacted for nothing more than a couple of level 2s that are there, and then the NEMA plugs, which is 400 amps, which is a ton of space, because a lot of you guys have 600 amps total in the building. But here are the one lines that we've done. So now we can give this to an electrical contractor, and we can start bidding out the project. We know how many feet we're going to run everything. We know that this is going to be a code compliant project. So when we go for permits, we're not going to have any problems or have any changes to addition to cost. We're able to identify what panels we're going to be using, which I believe this one's an 800 amp panel or 1,000 amp panel. And so very, very detailed that has to happen so we can get this. So now we're looking at inclusive. So before, we're looking at these costs, say $78,000 for the EV charger. Okay, but now we're looking at a bill, take that times 3, and then add a couple other chargers. We're looking at 150, 200,000, but here we're looking at total cost 538,000 to get this project going. Okay, so this isn't the 180,000 or the 200 or 300,000. So this is, and then on top of that, Ameren, this is an Ameren example. So Ameren is going to charge this facility, the dealership, which is yourself, $64,390 for it, which sounds like a lot of money, but we're seeing that this is one of the lowest cost projects that we have. I just spoke to Ameren yesterday, And, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into line. Okay, the dealers that are in urban marketplaces, metropolitan marketplaces, there's a situation called congestion. Okay, so they may have to replace transformers down the line to be able to get power to your facility. So there might be 2 or 3 or 4 pole transformers that they're going to have to change out, plus add the one to your place. Okay, then you have the cost of the transformer that goes on the ground that's specifically dedicated for you. So $64,000 is a very, very reasonable number for this. So now this EV equipment that's supposed to cost $300,000 or $200,000, you're now looking at a $600,000 project. And this is for the 180s. If you bring it up to all 240s, you're putting at least another 100 grand onto this thing. Okay, here's another exclusive there for Shot Emission 4. They gave us permission to use it. The reason why I like this is because a lot of the dealers out there have a separate used car building, and they have a primary service department, or you have your main facilities that you do your operations with. So in this particular case, we're looking at bringing all of the heavy equipment, so all level 3s, DCFC chargers, okay, to this project. We're looking at all the level 2s in one building, and this is an area for this used car building is now a charging EV center, okay, for all the businesses. The reason why that made sense is that the most cost-effective way to bring a transformer in for the utilities is right here on the side of this pole. Okay, so you have to look at the factors that are involved. Okay, so to be able to get this project, put in the panels necessary, design it, electrical, you know, all the work that's necessary for this project to happen, you have to really go to a full-scale project, and this is what we've done. And honestly, guys, right now, all these designs you're seeing, we haven't charged anyone a dime, and we're investing 2,500, 20, 30 hours into these projects just for engineering to bring clarity, because I don't feel like it's right just to give you a price saying, hey, here's your price, good luck, guys, you're on your own. Okay, that is not the reality. I'm in the energy business, and this is challenging for me to see everyone being, you know, going through this. So I'm here to, so I just want to support as much as possible. So we're coming in, we're designing these things properly with I believe this one's with a 2,000 amp panel, and then the distribution that goes through it. Now this is a good example for Evergy. Kansas, Missouri, they use the same formulas. Okay, on this. So this is an Evergy project. You have to be very cautious on expenses because they're much higher than what you expect. So this is actually for 180 kilowatt chargers for your level 3s, not even the 240s. Okay, that's when this was designed for the Ford Elite. So we're using 1,028 amps, okay, and 854 kilowatts. Okay, a lot of power. Your existing buildings are probably running off of 100 to 120 kilowatts right now at this time. This is the shocker right here. So we look at just the overall cost. So the cost to come in and fully reconstruct that building, okay, which is putting in the panels, doing all the trenching, doing all the line, all the EV services and things, comes up to a very large number. Okay, their existing building couldn't even consider doing this. They're maxed out. So here we're looking at a cost with full infrastructure of $987,000. Okay, if they went this direction. Okay, this is a true number from Evergy. We got this from Evergy. They're charging them $325,000 to put a pole and a transformer, concrete-based transformer on their property, and this is the most efficient, effective way Evergy can do it for this particular client. So for a total equipment cost and total equipment utilization, circuitry, everything designed, you're now looking at $1,300,000. Okay, this is real. This is what's happening. And I'm seeing that the buildings that are capable to take everything is anywhere between 0 and 10% of the facilities out there. So this is what's under the covers that nobody's talking about until now. Here's another project for another Metropolitan Ford dealership for Evergy. Okay, and this one, we just finished the designs. We haven't specifically bid it out. So this has a few assumptions in there, but this is the reason why this is a nice project and that we're going to potentially see a lot of is because, you know, it's sad. They have a 480 volt transformer on their property right now. Okay, first glances, we looked at it. You know what? We might be lucky. It looks like you may have the equipment there. So let's take a look at it. When we dug into it, we realized they can't use any of it. And their building is maxed out 100%. So they can't even put in, technically, they can't even put in the NEMA plugs because that's 400 amps. So this is one of the designs where we're coming into the pole, we're bringing in, Evergy has to bring in a new pole transformer, and they have to do a new concrete base transformer on the foot of this. And then all the distribution panels and everything is outside of the building. So as you can see, the level 2s are up on that parking lot area there to charge. Okay, the customer facing is in the front. They're a highway store. And then, so we have the customer facings. We have the level 2s and 3s over on the side for servicing and deliveries. And then inside, we have the connections and things for NEMA, for all the NEMA plugs, which is 400 amps, because you have to build this system to the maximum capacity as if 100% of everything's being utilized at one time. Because seeing the operations side of things, the service, everything has to be charged, we will see the time in the next 5 years or 7 years where 100% of everything's going to be used for a 15-minute period of time or greater, which we'll get into that in a second. But here's the one lines that we've created that shows all the charging networks, the systems. We can now take this information back to Evergy and say, hey, here's the power distribution. And when we originally got the engineering study from the company that had done it, that they had paid $1,500 to $2,500 for, all they came back and said, hey, here's a Google Earth, guys, and here's 10 dots in my service department, and here's where we'd like to see our level 3 chargers, which are in far different places, which means more trenching, more cabling. You may have to relocate some circuitry. Didn't make any financial sense. So on this right now, we're saying, no, let's do what's best for this property and let's identify what's happening. So this is a brand new service, which code was just changed, ironically, to handle this EV charging, so that you can put in new services and run 2 services in parallel, or 2 services at a facility. Hasn't happened before. It happened in the last few years when EVs started coming on the picture. So this is something that a lot of you are going to be seeing and are going to have to be put in. Now we can take this, we can negotiate with Evergy, look to see what we can do to get those costs down, and we can get this bid out properly, and you can see realistically what it's going to take. And everyone on this call, it is not the cost of the equipment only that they kind of lead you or give you that direction saying, hey, it's a few $100,000 and you're good, let's move on. This one has some assumptions. We use the same, since it's Evergy, since this is the same scope of work and the same transformers for the SMF on the previous example, but they're potentially looking at a $991,000, a $1 million upgrade to bring in a new service, plus the cost of Evergy. Rather, it's $325,000, $325,000, $200,000. Even if it's zero, you're looking at $1 million just to get your facility to operate as an EV dealership. Okay. Now that we know that there's all this money that has to be invested into our facilities, okay, and the charging stations, as great and fun and neat as they are, that's a commodity. Okay, that's something that's easily controlled. Okay, now we have to look at the power and how is that going to affect us. Okay, so realistically, 4 chargers operating at one time is going to bring you $250,000 a year in supplemental fees. Okay, this isn't even the direct cost of energy. This is the supplemental cost to bring these fast chargers, these DCFCs, and run and operate them at one time, because that is a lot of power in a short period of time. So now this 15-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute full charge scenario doesn't look so great. You know, the slower, longer ones have a different fee structure altogether. So we're talking about energy and cost. So when we look at this, we're looking at, okay, consumption of energy, kilowatt hour rates. Everyone's always heard of this. I pay 9 cents a kilowatt hour. I pay 6 cents. I pay 12 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what this Midwest typically is saying right now. So that's really, okay, this is what's being consumed. Rather, it's being consumed in a 15-minute period of time, or it's being consumed in a slow rate where, say, 5 miles per 1 hour. Okay, so this is just the overall consumption. It's fairly simple to do some calculations and saying, here's going to be my cost for the energy bill. Then underneath is the facility charges, or the demand and facility charges. This actually is a very, very, very complicated methodology of conversion. I've been told that, you know, many utility companies, they don't want you to know how they come up with it. But here's a simplified version of how we can look at this. It's let's take a look at the kilowatts that is being a formula to it. The kilowatts that's being charged on demand, which is what's needed, okay, times the rate of what's being utilized. So if we were to go back and look at that 800, it was like 856 kilowatt or 854 kilowatts right here. It had a very simple methodology of $9.99 per kW. Okay. Now remember, this is the delivery of the energy. Okay, this is not the overall utilization. So just as a simple calculation, $9.99 times 854 kilowatts, bam, there's an $8,500 charge just for the demand charge itself. And then a lot of times there's demand and facility charges. And then on top of that, you have all sorts of utilization charges. There's also 2 or 3 different charges that's associated with this. So this number, from when you're hearing these stories about your energy bills going from 10,000 to 40,000 instantly, that's really what we're seeing in multiple situations. So this is important on how to control this, okay? Because, you know, the dealers, you're not victims on this deal. Okay, this is a strategy. So what can we do about this? So, but this is something you have to look at, because if we can control your cost of energy, you are now controlling your margins to the dealership, because this can get out of hand quickly. And on the delivery cycle, the way that demand really works is this. If you have this dealership, you've got 3 chargers of your fast chargers plugged in at one time for a 15-minute period of time. You are now, if you're in Evergy's area for 1 year, you're going to be paying that peak rate. Okay, so this is for them to have that energy available for you. You don't have to use it, but it's just there at the transformer saying, if you need it, it's there. So now we're looking at, if everything's on one building, now you're looking at your HVAC, you're looking at your compressors, you're looking at the lighting, you're looking at everything associated with power, plus the NEMA plugs, plus the level 2s. And if you're fortunate or unfortunate enough to put a level 3 on there, now that is a major, major factor. So understanding energy needs to be a part of your business or of your mindset, because you know, hey, I got a delivery real quick. Let's get that going. Hey, this customer's coming to pick up the service, you know, this vehicle from service, and we just bought a car off the transport, and we have somebody here who wants to test drive it. So now you got all 3 chargers going at one time. Then also you've got, since every vehicle, you've got 5 cars lined up at the level 2s. So you can see a very real scenario happening. Okay, this isn't just, these aren't what ifs or assumptions. That will happen because that's your business model, that's your operating model. And here's your equipment that's going in there. So there are solutions to this. Okay, it's really about how do you control your cost and your margins. Okay, one is you can look at saying solar can become very attractive right now because it will hedge some of the increases that's going on, especially for your primary building. So say we do the NEMA 3s only, or you have a couple level 2s and some NEMA ports in there, and you're going to increase your energy by 40–50%. Well, we can look at solar producing on that rooftop and putting it in potentially offsetting, okay, on the KWHs. Now that's something we have to look at. Cogen, that's also something else. This is all what I consider taking your power needs in control by on-site production, not from the utility company, but just on-site production itself. And then energy storage. This is something that needs to be looked at, because with energy storage, a lot of times that's looked at as the intelligence, but also just an efficient, effective way to combine inexpensive and transferring it to expensive power. Let me give this one example real quick. Solar, I'll run through it, because this actually is about taxes. This is about how do you utilize federal taxes, how do you use amortization schedules, so that we can pay for these things or pay for this equipment. So in this particular case that we're looking at right here, there was an expansion to a building done that had a certain roof period, and we're looking at a solar system. So we've combined either a new roof or an expansion to a roof, and we're now creating this as a system itself. So we're taking project money, say 815,000 plus about 400,000, 450,000 that was allocated from TPO roof systems and things on this. So the federal tax credit, and the solar is important to understand with EVs because of this very reason. The tax credit on a solar project is not capped. So here we're looking at $244,000 of credit for the solar system itself, and then for the additional cost of the roof is $135,000 of tax credits, which the tax credit is what you receive and you spend it 1-for-1 on your taxes. So it's actually a commodity that you can sell. So if you owe, say in this case, at the end of the year, it's a profitable year and you owe $500,000 in taxes, now you can have $250,000, $350,000, almost $400,000 that you can utilize this instead of you writing a check. Now you have these credits that'll offset that. Then we've got bonus depreciation schedules. So we're shortening up this equipment. So now you've got the roof system and the solar, which is now part of the solar system, that you can depreciate and amortize. So now so in this particular case right here, you literally have about $1.2 million of services between a roof and a solar system that has been bought down to $200,000, $219,000, which now gives it a 2.9-year payback. So this is a strategy that we're looking at. And then if you can go on to the next side of it, saying we can utilize this system for some EV charging, now we can look and see where we can kind of share cost or take a cost that, hey, we got to bring in a new panel as an example. Well, we can take that new panel and then that we have connections up to the EV systems as an example, and have as part of the solar, remove caps and things. So now we can do amortizations, and we can do some, so you have depreciation, bonus depreciation that can be advanced, and then you can look at 30% tax credit on the entire system. And then in the meantime, while you're doing this, you've got about 42% of the power of the existing building, the way it's operated today, being offset. So now this new power demand side, or this new usage, can now be replaced by solar. And that's at the level 1s and the NEMAs. You'll never see, you're going to see that solar can't replace the level 3s, the DCFCs. So here's another scenario. We're utilizing tax credits, federal tax credits, and amortization. Bonus amortization is going to get you some huge advancements. This dealership right here has to put it on a new roof. We're working with a company, $279,000 for a roofing system. The solar system is maxed out due to the capacity of what their building can handle electrically without having to invest another several hundred thousand into it. So it's about $259,000. You have $585,000 in total services between a charging station that we're going to be able to connect up and use, all the circuitry, the roof that had to been done, and the power system with the solar. So by the time you receive your federal tax credits, $175,000, the rebates, $15,000, and then the total net, before depreciation is $394, and use your depreciation on the whole thing. Now this $585,000 comes up to a total cost of $280,000. Okay, so now what's happened is that you have to pay for the roof anyway, which is $279,000. So now you're looking at getting a free solar system, and also working getting that level 2 transformer. So this is actually a tax strategy. Okay, so when we bring in renewable energy, we can look at infrastructure costs, things like that, and see what we can blend into it so we can get some good tax, as a strategy to help get some of these federal tax credits back over some amortization schedules coming into play. And then you get a little bit of an offset of things, and this is before amortization and things. So this is a free system. Absolutely 100% no. There's a cost, but it's exchanged out with taxes. Cogeneration, on-site power, that also is taxes. This is a way where you can take 24/7, do on-site, be in island mode, take full control, and we'll have to talk about that at a later time when we have a little bit more time on it. But this is something that now has become very real because of the amount of the infrastructure. So we can actually build in a system that has 100% of the infrastructure that you can take full control of your energy on, and you cut the utilities out completely. You don't have to put the transformers on site, none of that stuff. Okay, so, and here's what we're talking about, just some advanced benefits, but it is a renewable, which now comes into that 30% tax credit strategy. That's something that changed over this last infrastructure bill, is that they're allowing renewable power generation systems to now get credited 30%, plus there's a couple other tax strategies that go with it. So we might be able to get 40 to 50% included tax depreciation on this, or federal tax credits on these type of projects, and you build everything into it because it's a system. And it's off grid. So if the grid goes down, bam, you're running and operating. This is also blended into the energy management. The reason why this is important is as these level 2 chargers go way up, this is where the energy storage system comes in. It's really about saying, I want to store cheap energy, and I want to use that cheap energy when it costs me the most. And I want to get rid of these demand facility charges. So this is something that deals with operations and things. Okay. And we'll have to talk about this at a little later time, but what nobody is talking about right now is the fact that there's tax on fuel that's now going to be transferring over to charging stations. So there's monitoring. How do we meter that or sub-meter that so that we can now get the fuel tax for the highways and things like that. So this is something else that's going to become a part of the picture soon. So let's look at incentives here. So this is where it's kind of tricky. We've got some things going on with Ameren where they actually were ahead of all the OEM requirements. And it takes years, multiple years, to make changes to the requirements. So what they got approved and passed was the fact that they come out and they originally say, hey, we have all these rebates, great. Well, you know what? These 120, Ford's coming out and saying 120s, 150s, 180s, 240s is what we're going to require. Well, but Ameren's coming back and saying, we'll give you $20,000 per DCFC if you don't exceed 60 kilowatts now. It was 50, now they were able to find a way to calculate to 60, okay? So 60 kilowatts is your max. So this incentive, off the table, 100%, nothing you can do about it. Now on the level 2s, they're being creative on this. If it's customer facing, there's a maximum of 40 amps. Well, 19.2 is 87 amps, approximately 83 amps. So the traditional level 2s that the OEMs are requiring would throw this off and you wouldn't be able to use it. But they have a term called behind the fence. They're using it for fleet. You don't actually have to have a fence, but you can't make it customer facing. It can be accessible, but not facing it. So if we can describe this as a fleet EV charger, you can utilize $5,000 rebate for that particular purpose. Okay, and then they are looking at, they've just put a team together to help negotiate and to work with this infrastructure cost, which is going to be huge because Ameren has some scenarios where the cost is $1 million. Okay, because they got to replace so many transformers just to get to this dealership. So, in those unusual situations where they're crazy.
Let me jump in. Does Evergy offer these same?
Yes, they do. Actually, Evergy does offer them.
And what are some other local incentives?
Yeah, so here's Evergy's incentives, and this just got approved, I think it was yesterday in Missouri. So now this is available in Missouri for incentives. They're doing $2,500 per port. They don't have any minimums or maximums on any of the level 2s or any of the level 3s. So level 2 typically has 2 ports, and so 19.2 is going to qualify. And so with the 2 ports, you get $5,000 per system. So 7 times 5 is $35,000 for that. And they are including equipment and installation costs. So that's what's really good. The DCFC, same things. If you want to put in a 50 kW, you can. If it's a 240 or a 350, you can do that as well. You get $20,000 per DCF. So that is actually there. And then they have what's called a revenue justification model. Both of them are doing this. And this is where you need to work with a professional energy company, because we can come in and we can calculate for them on a long-term basis the how much revenue they're going to receive or how much flow of energy they're going to receive. So then they can come back and justify saying, okay, that 325,000 you're seeing with Evergy, we're hoping to go back to these couple car dealers. We're hoping to go back to them and negotiate with the numbers saying, here's your revenue model, because there is none yet, because these EVs are just rolling out. So here's your revenue model. Here's how much money you're going to make. Let's see what you can do to absorb these costs. Okay, so that's what's really happening right now.
Okay, is the local energy company the best resource to go to for questions about the rebates, or are there other outside consulting firms that you can utilize? Can they call you? What are some of the steps they can take to make sure they're maximizing the credits?
I would say call
in this law.
I mean, you call the utilities, they'll give you the exact same answers I'm giving you, because I just got an update yesterday with both of them, Ameren and Evergy. Got off the phone with them yesterday. And the reality is this: when you come work with energy company, we can now look at combinations of things. Okay, because right now, Ameren is really stuck with the way that they have to deal with it, and you can't rely on certain representations, because it's the start. If you were there at the, in St. Louis at the Ritz when we had that meeting, they were there making all these disclosures, and I was there saying, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? And they're saying, oh yeah, I guess you're right. You can't use any of the rebates, even though they're here. Since then, they've now came back and made some changes to this fleet behind the fence. Now that's happened since our meeting. Now, honestly, I think the Dealers Association needs to put a lot of pressure on these guys to say, hey, you're getting all this equipment, these transformers and these poles that's costing several $100,000. What can we do to help? What can you do to help absorb some of these costs? Because it does help them out. Eventually, it's infrastructure. You need it, so you have to pay for it, but it is going to help them out as well in their business model. So, but when it comes to tax credits and strategies, there are different ways of approaching it. And it's not, and like this, and I really, it frustrates me as a business owner to hear, oh, we're going to give you a 30% tax credit, like they're representing like it's solar, but they put a cap of $30,000. Well, if you got to spend $1 million, what the heck is $30,000? Towards it. So since then, they've come in, and there's a little bit of a strategy that they put together in some marketplaces to justify this, to where, if you're tax exempt, they're allowing a cash scenario, but they've raised that cap to $100,000 for certain scenarios. And there's a lot of the dealers out there, whether if they're metro or urban. If you're urban, you automatically get a cap up. You automatically get the cap up to 100,000. Now you do have to use prevailing wage. Okay, so your costs are going to go up a little bit as well. But so you've got a $100,000 cap. So if it's a $500,000 project, it's 20%. Not so it's okay. It's better. But here's the census tracts that they're talking about. Okay, and this is for St. Louis and Kansas City. Everything in the purple, technically, is going to be available. It's a low income development area and or urban non-metropolitan. So if you're in the urban non-metropolitan, then you're in that area, then that's fine. If you're in the lower income, like St. Louis, you're like, oh, nothing in St. Louis. There's quite a bit of area in St. Louis that is that does have coverages. There's a lot of areas that does not have coverages. Like as an example, was it St. Charles? They actually have a little sliver, and the Ford dealership there does have the ability to use that $100,000 cap versus 30,000. So all these little things will help. Same thing in Kansas City area. Same thing down in was it Cape Girardeau, where they're actually in a metro area where they can raise that ceiling to 100,000. So there's isolated situations. So we can get the addresses. We can check on the census tract exactly where their address is and identify if we can at least jump that $30,000 cap to a $100,000 cap. Then when we're looking at the charging station grants, this is an area where it's going to be a case by case by case by case by case situation. Okay, you have the USDA that is going to really support dealers that support agriculture. Okay, that's not in here, but that's one of the resources that we have that we can now start looking at and putting a grant together, writing a grant specifically for that. If we have the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, they have funds available. Okay, they're still trying to figure out, we're at the tail end of figuring out how to make this happen. We're gonna be having a meeting with them so we can find a structure to get as many of the dealers in this system to utilize this up to 80%. There's a lot of misnomers. This NEMA, they came into the meeting and they said, oh, we've got $40 million that we're going to spend on that. Well, once you dig into the weeds a little bit, this NEMA is $40 million spent over 5 years. So they've got $8 million that they're going to spend per year. And really their goal is to come in and saying every 50 miles on these certain corridors that I'm showing, the dark green corridors, we need to have a charging station. So what's positive is that a lot of dealers are on highways. So if they're fortunate enough to be on a major highway that's transporting it and there's not an EV facility there, a charging station, and they need one because they have to go from St. Louis to Kansas City as an example, straight shot. If there's a 50-mile section, they end up within 1 mile of that. Now they may have some resources available. But what I'm noticing right now is this. Yes.
Mitch, let me jump in again real quick. We got about 4 minutes before we have to wrap up. Anything you'd like to touch on? So can we get a copy of the deck that you're providing for this?
Yes.
We can disseminate out to our attendees.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Anything you'd like to touch on before we wrap up? I think it's safe to say that anyone who's dealing with this realizes how complex it is. It's also incredibly expensive, but there are avenues to help you cover the costs in terms of credits, rebates, and grant money. If you have questions, we're going to keep digging into this as we proceed into 2023 and into the Inflation Recovery Act. But the information is complex. You're going to need someone to help you and guide you through the process. Mitch is as good as in the state of Missouri, in our opinion, and he's been a partner with us for a long time. So, Mitch, anything you'd like to add in closing?
Yeah, there is, and it's not always good news or bad news, but this is the reality. You cannot make a business decision based on grants and incentives. Okay, That's just the current reality. You can on tax credit strategies and amortizations because those are all very real. And then there's certain rebates that are absolutes. If they fit, they're there. If they don't fit, they're not there. And that's the way this whole process has to be looked at. So going into pie in the sky saying, hey, I got a $900,000 infrastructure cost, I got a $500,000 cost to convert 600, it's not 300, and I'm hoping to get this grant, or I'm hoping to get this incentive that's not established right out of the gate, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So this is one of those things where you just need to really deter. You've got to look at your building. Every single building in this state is different. So you have to determine your baseline, where you're at. We have to look at what the requirements are. We got to see what's available, what we can use in your existing panels and system, or do we need to go to what, everything new? What's your new energy demands? What's that going to look at? And then we can look at the cost and funding. So to look at just the money and not realize how much money it's going to be needed or how that's going to come in is different. We are seeing a lot of communities coming in and supporting cities and things like that. So us hiring or contracting with grant writing services puts everyone miles ahead, and I'm working on creating templates, changing the names, changing the revenue models, but changing how we can affect the cities so that they can now fund us, because cities want electric infrastructure. Okay, so many of them will help if you ask and have them receive coming in, because they, number one, don't want to see you overextend yourself and go out of business or cost, or so they don't want to see that. And they want these resources inside their communities. So everyone is going to be a little bit different, but we can approach it. But the whole thing is this: you can't kid yourself on this stuff. You can't make assumptions anywhere. The costs are too great. Okay, every time I make an assumption, a business, it costs me money. So this is the plan that we really have. And if you come in, we will do all of these services. We've supported you for 7 years. We've been in the power industry, energy industry, since really technically 2011. And we've been advanced on that. So with cogeneration and things. So I want to help you guys, okay, as much as I can. And I'll give my resources to help you guys do this.
Okay, so we are up against our quitting time. We will send a follow-up email out with this information, and we'll also recorded this session for anyone in your dealership might want to listen to it, find out more information. Mitch will also include his contact information and to us for you to follow up if you have questions of him. Again, this is incredibly complex. It's not going away. Whether it be through consultation, you're going to need help with consultants like Mitch you deal with from a financial standpoint, because this can get very, very serious from the immediate start of it. So thank you again. We appreciate your time. Mitch, thank you for the information, and we apologize for the technical issues at the beginning, and I think we got through it. And stay posted. We'll be doing more of these.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.
All right, I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to helping you guys get through this. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it.